We're here today for the simple reason that President Ramaphosa refuses to be as good as his word and act against corruption, act against criminality in our parliament. Those kinds of actions go unchecked, whereas what President Ramaphosa perceives as a slight, which is a deputy minister not asking him permission to go on a private trip that he didn't have to ask permission for, that is punished in the most severe terms. But serious fraud and the misleading of Parliament is somehow condoned by President Ramaphosa's government. That is an enormous double standard, and that shows you that the ANC isn't at all interested in combating corruption. This matter concerns Minister Nkabane, the Minister of Higher Education. She announced certain appointments to the SETA boards, the Sector Education and Training Authorities, which are crucially important in the higher education sector of South Africa. Our colleague Karabo Khachau then went and did an entire table of everybody who was appointed and discovered, lo and behold, that there were a whole lot of deployed ANC cadres. So the next question, obviously, was to ask how were they selected? And the minister said it was by an independent board of experts. Now, when we dug a little bit further and found out who these experts were, 3 out of the 6 were employees of the minister in her own department, and several others were deployed ANC cadres from various positions, and I have them listed here. So far from being independent people who had come in as experts to make the appointments, we had the minister's chief of staff, we had a chief director for the SETAs, accountable to the minister, and we had the director of corporate services, who's very close to the minister. So she put 3 people who work for her and 2 others, one of whom denied that that was his job afterwards, into choosing these critical roles for people who administer many tens of millions, supposedly in service of higher education in our country. And so that was a blatant lie to a committee of Parliament, which is considered to be a lie to Parliament. This was a blatant lie to Parliament and a misleading of Parliament. Now, that has been held in the past to be fraud, and lying to Parliament and fraud are 2 criminal contraventions. There are several precedents to this in South Africa's history, both during our democracy and before our democracy. Before our democracy, you will remember the information scandal. Most of you weren't born yet, but I was in your shoes because I was a journalist in Parliament covering the information scandal. And when it turned out that Connie Mulder, who was a minister then, had lied to Parliament, he was forced to resign. And when that lie could be linked to John Vorster, who was the president, the prime minister at that time, we had a change of constitution in the meantime, of course, he was forced to resign as well from the presidency of the country. So it is very important to understand that even under apartheid, these infringements were considered so grave that a president and a minister of state were forced to resign because of a lie they committed to Parliament or even only knew had been made to Parliament. Tony Yengeni was found guilty of fraud for misleading Parliament, and that is where the precedent of a fraud contravention comes from. Tony Yengeni received a very high punishment. So even under Thabo Mbeki and others, lying to Parliament was not tolerated and should not be tolerated now. It is very important to understand that we have to, as the official opposition who's now part of government, but it's clear we have to continue our role as opposition in order to hold the ANC and the President accountable